Welcome to Refuge Freedom Stories, brought to you by Refuge Ministries Canada. For the next half hour, your hearts will be filled with hope as you hear real-life stories of people who have been changed by the power of God. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to Refuge Freedom Stories. I'm your host, Johnny T., and today my guest is Ken Webb. Ken served 33 years in the U.S. Army, rising to the rank of Lieutenant Colonel with combat deployments in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kosovo. After retiring from the military, he completed a second career with American Airlines and 6 months as a defense contractor. Now, as a budding author, he's in the process of finishing his debut crime thriller titled Trapped in Deception. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's awesome to have you here. First and foremost, let me thank you for your service, sir. I honestly believe wholeheartedly that anyone who is willing to take that time out of their life and serve their country deserves recognition, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
So let's get to your journey of faith. So let me ask you this. I know that you're a believer, and I know that God got a hold of your life somehow. Was that integrated into your path into the military? Did it come before or did it come during?
I would say it came before. There's some convolution. When at that specific point in your life did you become a Christian? It has to be some moment you remember. And I used to reflect back to a time during a study hall. I didn't really grow up in a Christian home, but a Christian school for a short period. I raised my hand to pray, but I don't necessarily go along with that. I don't think you have to remember a specific time. I think you need to believe. That's what I think it is. And I did, but I think it was a gradual process, learning from my grandfather, who I lived with for a long time, who was a good Christian. My grandmother, also a Christian, but didn't attend church. And I'm being taught prayers for a child and the Lord's Prayers, seeing my grandfather read the Bible, not being a hypocrite, being true, being dependable, being very honest. Not acting one way in church and another way, but acting the same way every time, with few exceptions. He wasn't perfect. But I think that through trials and tribulations, God was with me. I also actually believe this. God had plans for my life, and he pretty much forced it to happen. I think that it's like some of these things that we'll talk about, if you get into why am I in Peru, why did I study Spanish, it was where every other door was closed. It's not hard to go through the right door if it's the only one open. And I do believe that. I have a story about a mole that was cut out of me recently that was cancerous, and about that, to where God spoke to somebody else. And then I said, why didn't God speak to me? And he said, well, I did speak to Ken twice, first through his girlfriend and then through his teacher, but Ken didn't listen.
There you go. I'm a big believer in the consistency of faith and just learning to listen to God and to understand his ways. And that is eternal life. He knows us and we know him, right? And those are the ones that the enemy is concerned about. You play the game every Sunday and whatever else you do. He's concerned about those that are legitimately sold out for Jesus in every aspect of their life. And that does come with challenges, as you said, and it does come with obedience. And that's all part of our growth. God builds precept upon precept. And you would understand, being in the military, it's very important to have process. It's very important to have precept upon precept, and that consistency and that drive and that purpose and that plan that you need to follow, because your life depended on it, right? So as we journey along with you in that, what led you to join the military in the first place?
I was always interested in the military. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I'm very adventurous as far as my goals in life. Wasn't always a very adventurous person. Didn't get to travel a lot growing up. Didn't have a lot of money. I'm very introverted, not athletic. And saw somebody from high school, Wayne Woodgate, in the junior college I was going to. He was in a military uniform, fatigue light. And said, what's up with that? Because he had the boots and everything. He was in an ROTC program. I got in the ROTC program, got a scholarship, went to basic training, paid for my university, was very proud to be a part of the military, got commissioned in 1992, a high amount of cutbacks after Desert Storm, not a lot of money, not a lot of opportunities. This was, of course, after the Reagan years where there was a lot of money, a lot of opportunities, and I stayed with it, still loved it, spent a lot of my own money. Obviously, reservist, had various civilian jobs. Wasn't making a whole lot in it, and then started doing the mobilizations in 2001 prior to 9/11 when there was an opportunity, and stayed with that. ended up with 33 years in as an Army reservist, but just like within weeks of 18 years active duty through all these mobilizations that I would jump out, traveling all over the world. Very challenging, very rewarding, but doing a mission I believed in.
I was just going to say, you had talked earlier about doors closing and walking through the only one that is open before you. So is that what happened when you retired from the military? Is that how you ended up in American Airlines?
When you are an Army reservist and you go on active duty, your job has to hold on to your job for you.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So what led me to American was honestly good insurance and flight benefits. And after I started mobilizing with the Army, it was mostly the flight benefits.
Sure. Just thinking about your journey through all these different paths and stuff like that, it kind of reminded me just now about the Apostle Paul. God would lead him to one place, and then he would say, oh, well, let's go here. And the Holy Spirit would say, no, you're not going here. You're going over here. And there was a dream of the Macedonian guy talking to him. Oh, well, we need to go to Macedonia, and so on and so on. So I think that lines up very similarly with how you expressed it earlier, that God closes doors and opens one door for you to go through. So you talked previously as well about ending up in Peru. So what led you to Peru, and how did God move you there and interact with you? How did you discern his purpose for a move to Peru for your life?
Okay. I first came to Peru in 2004. The reason being I went scuba diving in Nassau, Bahamas. I'm a big scuba diver. Met a woman there who I was interested in. She was a school teacher in Lima, Peru. Back in 2004, I sent her some emails. I wanted to go see her in Peru. I came here to Peru, was here for 2 weeks. I saw some things with her. We stayed in touch. And then before I went to Afghanistan in 2009, she was a teacher now in the Bahamas, not teaching chemistry like she did in Peru, but teaching Spanish in the Bahamas. So she became my girlfriend, and we stayed together. I had to travel to the Bahamas to see her, or she would travel to the U.S. occasionally. And we did break up in 2013, but I became best friends with one of her best friends named Cecilia. Cecilia in 2019 told me that they had discovered she had cancer, and it was already stage 4 cancer. So in 2021, when I came back from the embassy in Baghdad, Iraq, and I'm wearing that shirt from the embassy right now, I went to go see her in Peru. I came here, stayed with her and her sister for a little while. I was here about 3 weeks and did Machu Picchu, got very sick out there in the altitude, and returned the following year, stayed for 63 days again to see her. Did Machu Picchu again, but this time did the 4-day hike and was more careful with what I ate and what I drank. And then I came back again. This time I came back and I worked on a student visa when I got here, stayed for a little over a year, unfortunately. And what I didn't know, the reason, why did I study Spanish here? I started studying Spanish when I was here for 63 days. At that time, there was a lot of civil unrest. It was during the COVID thing. In 2020, December 10th is when I flew down. So I was up at a place called Cajamarca, which is famous for gold mines. And I was going to be traveling to Oxapampa. And the roads were closed due to rioting on the bus. So I couldn't take a bus. So I was like, well, I'm not going to just, watch television. So I'm going to study some Spanish. I looked around, found a good Spanish school. They offered housing as well for additional fees with a local family. Started studying Spanish. Peru is one of the best places to study Spanish. Ecuador is very good. And then there's some others. But as far as having a neutral accent, they're one of the best. Cost of living is lower here, a lower pace of life. Made some friends here. Then I came back for a year, and during that time, my friend got very sick, and they started having, it wasn't quite hospice, but it was close to their equivalent, and had a nurse come and stay with her, and I was going over there, and I'd asked at the church I was going to here, it's a Union Church, is the name of it, and it's English speaking. I asked them to go, and there's some verses in James about when somebody is sick, you go and you pray over them.
Call the elders of the church.
Yeah, well, I asked them to do that. Now, she was Catholic. She was Christian, but she was Roman Catholic. And the reverend told me something along the lines of, well, if her church wants to do that, that would be good. He's basically telling me no. So I looked at, there was a Spanish-speaking church. I started talking to them. And then finally, in the end, I called up my friend who's a minister, basically a retired minister. He's 72. He's also retired Army. And I said, can I do this? So I went to her place, and I was doing that every day over her. She did die during that time. Now, I asked my friend, what's going on with that? She wasn't supposed to die, right? Mm-hmm. And he said that could actually be a form of healing when somebody dies. Mm-hmm. So that was in late March. Then my mother got sick in June. She'd been progressively getting sick, but she was kind of a drama queen sometimes. She wasn't a hypochondriac, but she was definitely drama. But if she said she was in pain, she wasn't making it up. I had to go back to the U.S. She wound up dying 30 July. A lot of things were done at the last minute there. And then her brother, my uncle, he was sick before she got sick, and he was getting dementia. My cousins were taking care of things. He had no power of attorney, no will, no nothing like that. People went to check him out, said he's not lucid to make decisions. Even if he says, go ahead and do that, it's not reliable. So he died the 10th of October. I sold the house. I did eventually come back here. I just felt like this is a place, I do feel this is a place God wants me to be. I'm active in a church here. It's an Anglican church, which the church I grew up in with my grandfather was Reformed Episcopalian. And I like it a lot more. I've been in the Baptist churches. I've been in non-denominational. I'm more along the lines of that. But I also experienced a lot of judgment. I remember one time I went fishing instead of going to church. And I remember a woman telling me that that's a sin. And that was decades ago. But today I would say, well, do you speak for God? Because every case, I mean, that's asking, should I get a doctorate? Should I get a PhD? Well, that's a loaded question. That's situational. She can't know. Maybe it wasn't a sin for me. I wouldn't necessarily say that. I think God's much more open-minded and forgiving than some of these people are saying about.
Yeah, it's all about relationship.
If I have a good relationship with God, and I want to go fishing and I watch a service on television, not that that should be my primary way of doing it, but is that a sin? It's the same way when my friend was sick with cancer. I went and spoke to the church and I said, I don't want to give you my tithe. I want to give cash to my friend. And this was a non-denominational church in Texas. And they said, well, our opinion on that is that's between you and God. Because if you look at the early churches, this thing about giving a tithe to the church, everything I've read, everything I've been told by my friend who was a Baptist minister for a long time, he said, because I read the Bible instead of what people told me to believe. He went to Southwest Baptist Theological Ceremony. And he said in the early church, it would be something where like, you're a fellow Christian, some of your cattle dies, so I give you some of my cattle or give you money or something. It wasn't like, give this to the church and then the church decides. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't work. I'm not saying you can't give it to the church, but I think whether I give it to someone I see in need or I give to a church organization, I think that's between God and me.
Absolutely. And it's all about, again, that relationship that we've been talking about, because God says almost exactly that. If you see a brother in need, then you need to support them, right? And going back to your fishing thing, well, a lot of Jesus's disciples were fishermen. So there's no issue with that whatsoever, in my mind, in my heart anyway.
Well, she was saying I did that instead of going to church.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I understand.
But I don't think doing that one time makes it a sin. I think that's getting very legalistic.
Absolutely. Yeah, we want to avoid legalism as much as possible and rather flow in that river of living water that God tells us about throughout the Word. So when you had your loved ones pass away and your friend pass away, how did that challenge your faith? How did God use that to take you deeper into who He was and the truth of His Word? Because that could, for some people, be like a deal breaker, saying, you know what? You said I could pray for people and they'd be healed or the sick would get better, and that didn't happen. Some people might walk away from their faith because of that. But how did that continue to build yours?
Okay. First, I'll address it with my friend, because that's what I was actually angry about, because I did everything according to what it said in James. And I did it faithfully, like every day, and came up with different prayers for her every day, used ChatGPT to translate it to Spanish, read her the Bible in Spanish, stayed with her for hours every day, was faithful. And I went back and I talked to my friend about that. You know, I was like, what's going on? She still died. And he said, you know, the healing can sometimes be death.
Yep, absolutely.
So with my mother, my relationship with my mother was not good. She had been married 5 times, and that was very difficult on me. I didn't meet my father till I was 22. It was one of those situations where they were dating and she got pregnant, but he was not a part of my life. He's still not a part of my life. And I met him once, and I mean, there could be no doubt I was his child. I looked very much like him. My hands are like him. My mannerisms, my anxiety, it's all like him. My crooked teeth, overbite, very much like him. And it was not good. And when she first asked me to come back because she was sick, remembering that this is a person of drama. I'd been down here 3 weeks, and she was taking care of my stepfather who had dementia. And I actually stopped my first contracting job because she asked me to come back and help take care of him, and I did. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm going to sell all these things, and I'm going down to Peru, and I'm going to wait on another contracting job. So I left my car at her house. And when she asked me to come back, at first I didn't, because I was like, I just got here. She was in Texas. He was up by Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, more than a day's drive. She was going to go up there and bring him down to Texas to take care of him. And I said, Mom, you can't even take care of my stepfather. How are you going to take care of your brother too? And plus, he doesn't want to go down there with you. He didn't mean it to be rude. Never married, no kids. Extremely introverted, wouldn't talk to people very much at all. And she said, I'm going to go up. I'm going to need you to come with me. He's my brother and you're my son. And I was going to stay here until the contracting job contacted me. And by the way, when they finally contacted me, it was after 3 months. I said, you know what? I'm just going to live my life. I'm going to study languages because I was going to do French too, but now I just want Spanish. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to get my doctorate. Then I'll look at going back into the workforce if I want to. And so the person taking care of my mother was my stepbrother, wife. And I'm not saying my stepbrother because he had early Alzheimer's at that time. He was in his 60s, and he already had early Alzheimer's, and his father had dementia. And she finally got me on a video because my mom didn't want to talk to me, got me on a video with my mom. First of all, my mom was never fat that I can remember. And when I saw her cheeks swollen in, could hardly move, everything like that. And because I was in that student visa process, I had a little bit of trouble getting out of the country, but I did go back. I talked to her about some things that bothered me from my childhood. She asked for forgiveness. I gave it to her. And, I went to use the shower at Tammy's house, and I came out of the shower, and Tammy said, Ken, I'm sorry. And I was in shock. And I said, well, is she dead? He said, yeah. And I walked in there, and I picked my mother's head up, and I said, Mom, are you dead? And I looked at her, looked at the other side, I said, yeah, you're dead. And I just dropped her head back on the pillow, which looked like a sociopath thing to do. I was in shock. It did not hit me for a full 2 days. I immediately went out, started writing checks, taking care of things. I'd already paid for the cremation. I was able to work, to function for 2 days. Then it hit me. Then I cried and everything. With my uncle, when I lived with my grandparents, he lived in the same house until he was in his mid to late 40s. He had purchased a house in Maryland. And so when I went to go see him up in Pennsylvania and he was in a nursing home, he was already really gone. When we came back, I stayed with my cousin, Brian. His girlfriend and I were there, and he had already passed away. And then my stepfather passed away, I think it was August, so just a little over a year after my mother, in a nursing home. I really thought my mother would outlive him. People say, what did my mother die of? Well, I know she stopped eating, and that will kill you. There was a lot of depression going on. And then his son, the one with the early Alzheimer's, he died of 6 weeks after his father. But how do I deal with this? Well, I think God was with me the whole time through this. I think, honestly, this sounds kind of cold and callous, but there's a lot less stress in my life now that my mother has passed away. I didn't want her to die, and she was a Christian, but she made some very bad decisions in her life, and what we will come up with in our minds is far worse. I mean, how many times have I worried about what would happen? Who's going to do this? What are they going to do? And then it turns out to be a great big nothing sandwich. Now, I prayed quite a bit about this. I prayed, when my mother died and my stepfather was still alive, he had kids. I'm like, oh God, what's going to happen? Contest the will, say this, say that, So I signed off documents, gave it to the kids. Kids didn't cause me any problems. And I think a lot of that is prayer, because I prayed pretty strongly about that. So why did I not lose faith and everything? Well, because things worked out. My girlfriend down here, she has a very strong, supportive family. And I'm saying, I'm not really jealousy, but I wish I had that. If you don't have family, you kind of have to make your own through friends. We need relationships. That's a very important thing for us, this isolation. But really, we need relationships with real people.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what launched you into writing your book?
I couldn't not write it. It was therapeutic for me. One of my fallacies, I think I'm on the spectrum, ISTJ, on the Myers-Briggs, and I'm very detail-oriented. Now, my house is an absolute mess. It's a disaster. But how important are those things to me? It's an indication of how important something is to me and how much effort I put into it. When I write a paper, when I work on a project, I want that to be done perfectly well. I want things that I've asked for to be given to me on time. Everybody in that novel who speaks, and even some people who don't speak, everyone is based on somebody I personally know or knew. The good guy in the book is very loosely based on me. Exactly my age. This book takes place in 2014 and 15. Birth date is the same as mine. He's from Collingdale, Pennsylvania. His mother in the book is based on my mother. His dog in the book is based on the dog I had when I was 5 years old. He was in Kosovo, Iraq, and Afghanistan the same time I was there. He was at the University of Texas same time I was there. The bad person in the book is based on somebody who's a former friend. And I told about I overshare. I also overtrust. I put too much trust in people up front that I don't really know. And that's a bad thing. And, at one time I would have just said, well, I'm a trustworthy person. I would never cheat anybody. Yeah, it doesn't mean everybody's like that. I'm one of these people who's loaned a lot of money to people and not gotten it back. And I've learned to say no to people or to just turn it into a gift. And like I said with the tithing, we're supposed to be generous. God didn't tell us to be stupid, though. I look for somebody who's really in need and give that to them as a gift. The first time you see somebody in need, who's in genuine need, and you have the money, you have to give it to them without question, no hesitation.
So if people want to find out more about your story and where they can get it, when your book's going to be released and so on, where would they go?
Well, I have a website, and it's kenwebb69.com. KENWEBB 69.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and I do chapter readings from the book on there. I read Bible verses on YouTube. Also read some poetry. Edgar Allan Poe, Rudyard Kipling, some other authors. And so I would encourage them to go on there.
Okay, one final question for you.
Yeah.
What's the one thing you would tell people about God?
The one thing I would tell them is to try to have more faith and to understand that their time schedule is not necessarily his time schedule. I wanted things immediately, and I wanted things to get done, and those things, getting out of the Army was good for me. I loved doing this stuff in there. It was also, at times, a very high degree of stress. Now I have less stress. I have my pension. I've saved up my money. I'm not making as much money. But guess what? When you're retired and you don't have a job, you don't spend as much money. I sold my car. I'm not paying for gas. But I would say you have to trust more in God and on his timetable because I'm totally serious. I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to downplay my own achievements, but I just kind of tripped into things and it turned out for the best.
Amen. Yes, good solid advice. The Bible says that God's ways are far above our ways. So I can appreciate that for sure. Well, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. It's been great talking to you, and God bless you in all you do for him.
All right.
Grata certeza, Jesús mío es, me ha protegido en el fuego una y otra vez. Su sangre pudo mi alma limpiar y lo que hizo en el Calvario me bastará. Confío en Dios, mi Salvador, que no fallará, nunca fallará. Confío en Dios, mi Salvador, que no fallará, nunca fallará. Siempre rendido a su voluntad, sé que el autor de mi mañana unión. Gloria a Jesús, mi Rey eterno y mi Salvador. Confío en Dios, mi Salvador, que no fallará, nunca fallará. Confío en Dios, mi Salvador, que no fallará, nunca fallará. Oh, oh, nunca fallará. Mi Dios nunca fallará. Oh, nuestro Dios, Él es fiel. Busca al Señor, me escuchó y respondió. Busque al Señor, me escuchó y respondió. Busque al Señor, me escuchó y respondió. Es por eso que yo confío en Él. Busque al Señor, me escuchó y respondió. Busque al Señor, me escuchó y respondió. Busque al Señor, me escuchó y respondió. Es por eso que busque al Señor, y respondió. Busque al Señor, me escuchó y respondió. Busque al Señor, me escuchó. Busque al Señor, me escuchó y respondió. Busca al Señor, me escuchó y respondió. Es por eso que yo confío en Dios, mi Salvador, que no fallará, nunca fallará. Confío en Dios.
I hope that you have enjoyed the last half hour. Thank you again to Refuge Ministries Canada for hosting the show. So until next time, may God richly bless you with peace, love, and happiness.
We at Refuge Ministries are so blessed by the success of Refuge Freedom Stories and podcasts. In addition, we focus on youth prison ministry, release kits, and many other diverse outreaches to the needs of our community. As a nonprofit, there are many costs involved, however, and we are asking for your support. Financial gifts can be made via our website at www.refugeministriescanada.com or by calling 519-701-0108. Your giving makes this work possible, and we thank you in advance for your support. That's 519-701-0108. God bless you.